My son sent a text in the family group chat. We think it's best if Mom takes a step back for now. My daughter-in-law reacted with a bright green thumbs-up emoji. I replied, "Understood. I will respect that, and I will be stepping back from paying the house mortgage and from the $5,000 monthly transfers." That night, my phone exploded with desperate calls. But let me tell you how I got here. How I, a 72-year-old woman who had given everything, ended up being exiled from her own family with 16 words and an emoji. And how that same woman decided, finally, that enough was enough. It all started 15 years ago. My oldest son, Edward Vance, came home with Brenda on his arm, his eyes shining. "Mom, she's the one, Mitsawan," he told me. And I believed him. I welcomed them with open arms. I cooked dinner and brought out the good crystal. Brenda smiled and called me Mama Lydia from day one. She hugged me tight. She said she'd never met anyone as warm as me. And I, foolish me, melted. I thought I had gained a daughter. I didn't realize I had signed a lifetime contract as the family ATM. 6 months later, they got married. The wedding was beautiful. I paid for Brenda's dress, an ivory lace gown that cost $3,000. I also paid for the flowers, the venue, and half of the catering. "Brenda's folks can't contribute much, Mom," Edward explained. "You understand. You always understand." And yes, I always understood. I always said yes. I always opened my wallet. Because that's what mothers do, right? Sacrifice, give, support, even if no one is supporting you. A year later came the topic of the house. "Mom, we found the perfect house," Edward told me over the phone. His voice sounded excited, almost childlike. "But we need help with the down payment. The banks want 20% and we just can't come up with it." I had just sold the condo my husband and I bought when we were young. The money was tucked away. It was my security, my cushion for old age. But Edward was my son, and Brenda was pregnant. They were going to have a baby, my first grandchild. How could I say no? I gave them $40,000 for the down payment. My entire reserve, everything I had saved over 30 years of marriage. "We're going to pay you back, Mom," Edward promised, "as soon as we get settled." Brenda hugged me, tears streaming. "You're an angel, Mama Lydia. I don't know what we'd do without you." I felt good, useful, needed. I didn't know I had just bought my own ticket to heartache. It didn't end there. 2 months later, Edward came back. "Mom, the mortgage is higher than we thought. With the baby coming and all the expenses, we're stretched thin. Could you help us out for the first few months? Just until Brenda is back at work after the delivery?" I worked as a freelance tax preparer. I made good money, but I wasn't rich. Still, they were my children, my blood, my future. I agreed to pay $1,200 toward the mortgage each month. "Just the first few months," I repeated. Edward nodded. "Just the first few months, Mom." Those first few months turned into years. 5 years of paying the mortgage on a house where I didn't live, where I was barely invited, where there was always an excuse for my visit to be another day. "The baby's sick." "We have plans." "Brenda needs to rest." But when they needed money, there I was. Always available, always ready, always the savior. And then there was Paula, my younger daughter, married to Rodney Baker. They needed help too. "The kitchen is ancient," she said. $3,000 to remodel it. Rodney wanted to take an online coding course, $500. The kids needed tutoring, $400 a month. "Mom, you can afford it," Paula would say. "We'll pay you back when things get better." Things never got better. The requests never ended, and I never said no. Until one day I looked at myself in the mirror. 72 years old, tired, with wrinkles I didn't have 5 years ago, with a body that ached from working so hard to support other people's lives. I asked myself, when was the last time someone asked me how I was? When was the last time I got a hug that wasn't followed by a request? When did I stop being Lydia and become just Mom, the ATM? I decided to speak up. It was February, warm for the season. We were at my house, Edward, Brenda, Paula, Rodney, and the grandkids. A family dinner. I had cooked everything, as always. Pasta, salad, dessert. I served the wine. I waited for the right moment. "Kids," I said, my voice soft, "I need to talk to you about something important. I think it's time for you to start becoming more financially independent." They all looked at me. Edward raised an eyebrow. Brenda's fork froze halfway to her mouth. "You both have good jobs," I continued. "You've been stable for years. Maybe it's time for me to step back." The silence was brutal, as if I had confessed to a crime. Edward slammed his wine glass onto the table. "What does that mean, Mom?" His tone was cold, accusatory. "It means I need to think about my future, too," I replied. "I'm 72. I won't be working forever, and you're not children anymore. You can handle this on your own." Brenda let out a short, bitter laugh. "So, now you're tired of helping us after everything we've done for you?" I froze. Everything they had done for me? When? Where? Paula intervened. "Mom, you can't just cut us off all at once. We have expenses, obligations. We're counting on you." Counting on me. That phrase, as if I were a utility, an app, a renewable resource. "I didn't say I'd cut you off all at once," I explained. "I'm just saying we need to make a plan for you to become self-sufficient." Rodney shook his head. "This is very selfish of you, Lydia." Selfish. The word landed like a stone in my gut. 15 years of giving everything, sacrificing everything, and now I was selfish for wanting to breathe. Edward stood up from the table. "I think you're changing, Mom. You're not the same." Brenda nodded. "It's true. You're becoming bitter, negative. It's not healthy." The dinner ended in tension. They left early, without helping to clean up, without a proper goodbye. I stayed alone, surrounded by dirty dishes and a silence that hurt more than any scream. I didn't sleep that night. I tossed and turned, wondering if I had done wrong, if I really was becoming selfish, if it was my duty to keep giving until I was empty. The following days were strange. Edward wouldn't answer my calls. Paula responded with short, cold texts. "Busy, Mom. Talk later." As if I were a nuisance, as if asking for a little consideration had turned me into the enemy. I tried to explain myself. I sent long texts. I called. I insisted. Nothing worked. The ice between us grew colder every day, and I began to feel something I had never felt with my children. Fear. Fear of losing them. Fear of being left alone. Fear that my honesty had broken something irreparable. A week later, I got a call from Brenda. "Mama Lydia, we need to talk." Her voice was serious, formal, like she was in a business meeting. "Sure, what is it?" I replied, my heart racing. Maybe they had reflected. Maybe they understood my point. "Edward and I have been talking. We think you've been very negative lately. Your comments about money made us feel bad, as if everything you did for us was a burden." I gripped the phone. "Brenda, I never said that. I just asked that we think about the future." She sighed, that condescending sigh people use when they believe they are right. "The problem is your energy, Mama Lydia. The kids feel it. We feel it. We don't want that negativity around our family." She hung up. My hands were shaking. Negativity, toxic energy, those modern words people use to label anyone who is inconvenient for them. Me, who had given 15 years of my life. Me, who had sacrificed my savings, my dreams, my peace. Now I was the toxic one, the negative one, the one who didn't belong. 2 days later, it was worse. Paula invited me for coffee. I thought it was a sign of peace. I arrived at the cafe with hope. She was already sitting there, phone in hand. She didn't even look up when I sat down. "Hi, honey," I said. She just nodded. "Mom, this has to be quick. I have a meeting." We ordered coffee. She kept texting, ignoring me. "Paula, is everything okay?" She finally looked at me. "Mom, Edward told me what you said, and honestly, it's unbelievable after everything we've done for you." There was that phrase again. "What have you done for me?" I asked. I needed to know. I needed to understand what part of this equation I was missing. Paula frowned. Mom, we give you company. We visit you. We include you in our lives. Isn't that enough? Company? Visits? Inclusion? As if they were favors, as if allowing me into their lives was a gift I should be grateful for on my knees. Honey, I didn't ask to be a burden, I said. I just asked for a little more independence from your side. She shook her head. This isn't about independence, Mom. It's about you changing. You're becoming difficult, selfish, and frankly, I don't know if we want that version of you in our lives. I got up from the table. I didn't drink the coffee. I didn't say anything else. I walked out of that place with the last of my dignity. I walked to my car, sat down, closed the door, and there, alone, I cried like I hadn't cried since my husband died. I cried for the lost years, for the money that would never return, for the love I gave without measure that was now being collected as a debt. I cried because I finally understood something. To them, I was never Mom. I was a resource, a solution, a bank account with feelings. I couldn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling, thinking, calculating, remembering every transfer, every sacrifice, every time I said yes when I wanted to say no. And something inside me hardened, like cooling metal, like drying cement. I no longer felt sadness. I felt clarity, a cold, perfect clarity that showed me the unfiltered truth. They had used me for 15 years, and now that I dared to set a boundary, I became the problem. I opened my laptop and logged into my online bank account. I looked at the automatic transfers. $1,200 a month to Edward's account for the mortgage, $3,800 a month split between both children for emergencies, course payments, utilities, extras. Everything was there. Everything documented. Everything perfectly traceable. I took out a notebook and started adding. The numbers grew and grew. In 15 years, I had transferred over $200,000. $200,000 of my work, my effort, my future. I leaned back in the chair, took a deep breath, and made a decision. If they wanted space, they would get it. But the space would be real, complete. Without my money, without my help, without my ATM presence. They would have all the space in the world, and I would have my life back. The next day, I called the bank. Good morning. I need to cancel some automatic transfers. The operator was kind, efficient. In 10 minutes, all the transfers were stopped. Then I called the bank that held Edward's mortgage. I was a co-signer, a guarantor. My name was on those papers. I want to remove myself as the guarantor on this loan. They explained the process. It wasn't immediate, but it was possible. I started the paperwork, signed the documents, and sent the emails. Next, I reviewed the credit cards. Years ago, I had given Edward and Paula supplementary cards on my account for emergencies. So they wouldn't go without anything, I had told myself. Those cards were used every month. Restaurants, clothes, gas, things that were definitely not emergencies. I called the bank again. I want to cancel the supplementary cards on my account. The operator typed. Both of them? Both of them, I confirmed. Click, click, canceled. Finally, the joint account. I had a joint savings account with Edward that we opened when he bought the house. Just in case you ever need quick access to funds, Mom, he had told me. But the reality was that he always had access to my money without asking permission. I closed that account and transferred everything to a new one, solely in my name, solely under my control. I did all of this in silence, without notifying anyone, without drama, with the same coldness they had used to shut me out. If they wanted to treat me like a service, I would teach them that services can be canceled. And that day, I canceled my subscription to being used. 3 days passed, quiet and still. I felt strange, light, as if I had taken off a heavy coat that I had worn for so long, I no longer remembered what it felt like to walk without it. I drank my coffee slowly in the mornings. I read a book that had been sitting on my shelf for 2 years. I walked in the park alone, at peace, without expecting desperate calls, without being on alert for the next invented emergency. And then the text arrived, the text that changed everything. Edward created a new family group chat, but I wasn't in it. I knew because Paula accidentally forwarded me a screenshot. The message read, "We think it's best if Mom takes a step back for now. We need space as a family to heal." And underneath, Brenda's bright green thumbs up emoji, approving my expulsion, celebrating my absence. I stared at that screenshot for minutes that felt like hours. The letters didn't change. The thumb was still there, green, approving, celebrating, as if my exclusion were a family achievement, as if getting rid of me was a cause for joy. I read the message over and over, looking for something, a doubt, a crack, a sign that someone had said no, that someone had defended me. But there was nothing, only complicit silence, only that green thumb shining in my face like a final insult. Paula had sent me the screenshot by mistake. That was clear from the text that arrived 30 seconds later. "Mom, sorry, that wasn't for you. Please forget it. Forget it." As if it were that simple, as if I could erase the image of my own children casting me out of their lives. My fingers flew over the keyboard. I didn't think. I just wrote. "Understood. I will respect that, and I will be stepping back from paying the house mortgage and from the $5,000 monthly transfers." Enter. Sent to the original group chat, the one where I was still included. The silence that followed was absolute. I could imagine them. Edward staring at his phone, his eyes wide. Brenda holding her breath. Paula rereading the message, trying to understand if it was real. Rodney asking what was happening. All of them in shock, because none of them thought I would have the nerve. None of them believed that sweet Mama Lydia could bite back. But I had just done it, and the bite was deep. I turned off my phone, placing it face down on the table. I didn't want to see the responses, not yet. I needed this moment, this silence, this calm before the storm I knew was coming. I poured myself a glass of wine, something I rarely did. I sat on the armchair by the window, the same one where my husband used to sit and read the paper every Sunday. And for the first time in 15 years, I felt something like freedom. Heavy, painful, but real. The glass trembled in my hand, not from fear. It was adrenaline. It was power. It was the sensation of having recovered something I thought was lost forever. My voice. For so many years I had spoken in whispers, apologizing for existing, for needing, for wanting something for myself. And now I had screamed in silence. With 19 words that were worth more than $200,000, I had screamed, "I matter too, I exist too, and my existence is not reduced to what I can give." I looked at the dark phone. I knew what was coming. I knew the calls, the texts, the pleas, the accusations would start any minute. But for now, in this perfect instant, there was only silence, and the silence was mine. I finished the wine slowly, savoring every sip, savoring every second of this new version of myself that I was just getting to know. 2 hours later, I turned on the phone, and it was like opening a floodgate. 23 missed calls, 42 messages, voice notes, long texts, desperate emojis, all from Edward, Brenda, Paula, Rodney, even one from Jenna, Brenda's sister, who had never messaged me before. All of them wanting to explain, all of them wanting to fix things, all of them panicking because the money spigot had been turned off. I started reading. Edward first. "Mom, we need to talk. This is a misunderstanding. Please call me." Then Brenda. "Mama Lydia, you can't do this. We have obligations. You can't just leave us high and dry." Paula. "Mom, please understand that message was a mistake. It wasn't for you to see it that way." Rodney. "Lydia, this is very impulsive. You need to think about this better." Every message was a stab. Every word confirmed what I already knew. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about their cash flow. None of them said, "I'm sorry." None of them asked how I was feeling. None of them acknowledged the pain they had caused me. Just panic, just fear, just the desperation of those who watch their comfort crumble. And something inside me, something that still held a glimmer of hope, went out for good, like a candle burning down, like a light that flickers and dies. There was no turning back. I replied with a single message to the original family group chat. It is not impulsive. It is a thoughtful decision. You asked for space. I am giving it. But real space includes financial independence. I wish you the best. Period. No emojis, no exclamation points, no drama, just facts. Cold, clear, non-negotiable. The phone immediately started ringing. Edward. I declined the call. It rang again. Brenda. I declined. Paula. I declined. Rodney. I declined. Every rejected call was an act of self-love. Every silence I chose was a scream of dignity. I wasn't going to give explanations. I wasn't going to justify myself. I wasn't going to beg for a place in their lives. If they wanted me out, I would be out, but on my own terms. That night, I went to bed early. I expected not to sleep. I expected to feel guilt, remorse. But none of that came. Only a deep exhaustion. The kind of exhaustion that comes after carrying something heavy for too long and finally letting it go. I slept soundly, without pills, without turning over. For the first time in years. I slept in peace. I woke up with the sun streaming through the window. It was 8 o'clock in the morning. I had slept 10 hours straight, something I hadn't done since before Edward was born. I stretched in bed. My body ached less. My mind was clear, bright. I picked up the phone. 57 new messages, 13 more calls, even a 20-minute voice note from Edward. I didn't open anything. I just went to the kitchen, made coffee and buttered toast, sat by the window, and ate breakfast alone. Calm, complete. The phone kept ringing all day, but I had discovered something marvelous, the mute button. Every time it vibrated, I continued with my life. I watered the plants, I cleaned the house, I organized my closet. I found clothes I hadn't worn in years because I was always too tired, too worried, too busy solving other people's crises. I tried on a coral dress I bought 3 years ago and never wore. It fit perfectly. I looked in the mirror, and for the first time in a long time, I liked what I saw. By the third day, the phone stopped ringing so much. The messages spaced out, but their tone changed. It was no longer panic. Now it was manipulation. Edward texted, "Mom, the kids are asking for you. They're saying Grandma doesn't love them anymore." Paula sent, "I can't believe you do this to us right now, when Rodney is going through a rough time at work." Brenda sent a photo of my grandchildren with a caption, "They don't understand why their grandmother abandoned them." Every message was a hook. Every word was calculated to make me feel guilty, to make me come back, to make me open my wallet again. But something had changed in me. I could see the strings, the invisible threads they had always used to move me like a puppet, and now that I saw them, they didn't work anymore. I read each message with distance, with coldness, as if they were addressed to another person, because, in a way, they were. Those messages were looking for the old Lydia, the one who gave in, the one who blamed herself, the one who always came back. But that Lydia had died, and in her place, someone new was born, someone stronger, someone who had finally learned that love is not measured in dollars transferred. On the fourth day, the call I knew was coming arrived. It wasn't from Edward or Paula. It was from Antoinette, my older sister, the only family I had left from my generation. I answered because, with her, it had always been different. "Lydia, what is going on?" she asked, her voice soft, non-judgmental, only genuine curiosity. I told her everything, from the beginning, every transfer, every sacrifice, every humiliation, the group text, the green thumb, my reply, my decision. She listened in silence. When I finished, there was a long pause. "You know what I think?" she finally said. "That it took you 15 years to do the right thing." Her words hit me with unexpected force because she was right. 15 years of being an emotional ATM. 15 years of believing that giving until I was empty was love. 15 years of confusing sacrifice with worth. "Lydia, listen to me," Antoinette continued. "What you did was not cruelty. It was justice. And if they can't see that, it's because they never saw you. They only saw what you could give them." We hung up half an hour later. I was crying, but not from sadness. It was relief. It was validation. It was the confirmation that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't the monster they wanted to paint me as. That night, I sat down with all the bank statements from the past 15 years. I had kept every single one, every transfer, every payment, every receipt. I printed them out, organized them by year, by child, by purpose. When I finished, I had a stack of papers 8 inches high, 8 inches of evidence, of sacrifice, of misplaced love. I looked at them and felt something strange. It wasn't pride. It wasn't shame. It was clarity. The clarity of seeing your life summarized in numbers, of understanding exactly how much you were worth to others in monetary terms. I took a new gray folder, put all the documents inside, and organized them with tabs. Edward, Paula, shared expenses, extras, everything perfectly documented, as if I were preparing a legal case. And in a way, I was. Not for a judge, but for myself, to have tangible proof that I wasn't exaggerating, that it wasn't my imagination, that I really had given everything, and they really had taken it without a second thought. On the 5th day, Edward showed up at my door unannounced. He rang the bell insistently, 3 times, 4, 5. I looked out the window. He was alone, without Brenda, without the kids, just him, hands in his pockets, with that expression I knew so well, the one he wore as a child when he broke something and tried to fix it before I noticed. I opened the door. We looked at each other. The silence between us weighed tons. "Mom, we have to talk," he said. His voice sounded tired, defeated. "Come in," I replied. I didn't hug him. I didn't offer him coffee. I just let him pass. We sat in the living room, he on the armchair, I on the chair facing him, like 2 strangers negotiating, like 2 people who were once everything to each other and now barely recognized one another. "Mom, this got out of control," he started. "We didn't mean to hurt you. That message was a mistake. Brenda was upset. I was frustrated, but it wasn't serious." I looked him in the eye, those eyes that were the first thing I saw when he was born, that looked at me with adoration when he was a boy, that stopped seeing me at some point I can't pinpoint. "It wasn't serious?" I repeated. "Edward, I was kicked out of a family chat. I was told to take a step back and your wife celebrated it with an emoji. What part of that wasn't serious?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Well, you started all this with that thing about not helping us anymore. You made us feel like we were a burden to you." There was the perfect reversal. The victim turned into the perpetrator. "Edward," I said with a calm I didn't know I possessed, "in 15 years I have given you over $200,000. I paid your mortgage for 5 years. I transferred $5,000 a month. I covered emergencies that weren't emergencies. And when I asked for a little independence on your part, I became the bad guy. Don't you see anything wrong with that?" He shook his head. "It's not just the money, Mom. It's that you changed. You became different, colder, more distant." I laughed, a short, bitter laugh that escaped without permission. "I became different because I got tired, son. I got tired of giving and giving and giving without receiving even a sincere thank you. I got tired of being seen as a solution instead of a person. I got tired of existing only to serve." Edward leaned forward, his hands clasped. "Mom, I understand you're upset, but you can't just cut us off like this. We have obligations, the mortgage, the kids' expenses. Things don't work without your help." And there was the naked truth. Brutal, honest. He wasn't there because he missed me. He wasn't there because he cared about my pain. He was there because his financial world was crumbling. Because without me, the bills didn't close. Because he needed me, but not as a mother, as a bank. "Edward," I said, standing up. You are adults with jobs, with incomes. If you can't pay your mortgage without me, then you bought a house you couldn't afford, and that is not my problem. It is yours. He stood up too, his face flushed. Are you really going to do this? Are you going to abandon us like this? Your own children? Your grandchildren? I walked toward the door, opening it. I am not abandoning you, Edward. I am setting you free, and I am setting myself free too. You are going to learn to stand on your own 2 feet, and I am going to learn to live without carrying other people's worlds on my back. He looked at me in disbelief, as if he couldn't process that his mother, his sweet, submissive mother, was saying no to him. This is not over, he said, walking out. Brenda is furious. Paula is too. We're going to have a family talk. I closed the door behind him. I leaned my back against the wood. My legs were shaking. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my temples. But I had done it. I had said no to my son, and I had survived. The ceiling didn't fall. The world didn't end. It just changed. And that change, though terrifying, felt right. It felt like breathing after being underwater for too long. That night, Paula also came. Later, around 9 o'clock. She knocked softly, almost timidly. I had hoped for something different, hoping that maybe she, my younger daughter, would understand. But her first words made it clear. Mom, Edward told me what happened. This is crazy. You can't do this to us. I let her in. We sat in the kitchen. I made tea. She didn't touch it. She just fidgeted with the mug, turning it in her hands. Mom, I know you're upset. But think about the kids, what this means for them. The kids. Always the kids, the perfect shield, the card that never fails. Paula, I said, I love my grandchildren, but you are their parents. You are responsible for providing for them, not me. I raised my children. I did my part, and I did it well. Now it's your turn. She looked at me with glassy eyes. And what about us? Don't we matter? 15 years of a relationship means nothing? I leaned across the table. Paula, tell me something. When was the last time you called me just to ask how I was? Not to ask for money, not to ask me to watch the kids, just to talk? The silence was her answer. She lowered her gaze and swallowed. Mom, it's not fair. You know we're busy, that life is complicated. I stood up. Exactly, honey. Life is complicated for everyone, even for me. But no one ever asked if I was busy, if I was tired, if I also needed help. They just assumed Mom would always be there with her wallet open, with her arms open, no matter what. Paula stood up too. This is cruel, Mom, truly cruel. I looked at my daughter, my baby, the one who once hugged me every night before bed, the one who called me her hero, and who was now calling me cruel for refusing to be used anymore. You know what's cruel, Paula? I said, my voice trembling. Cruel is realizing that your children only look for you when they need something. Cruel is seeing a green thumb emoji celebrating your exclusion. Cruel is working until you're 72 to support lives that aren't yours while your own life is consumed. That is cruel. She grabbed her purse. I'm not going to listen to this anymore. When you calm down, we'll talk. She walked out, slamming the door, and I stood there in my kitchen, surrounded by a silence that no longer scared me. The following days were a strange mixture of peace and storm. Peace because I had finally set boundaries. Storm because the consequences arrived in waves. Brenda sent me a long text full of accusations. She said I was destroying their family, that the children cried for me, that Edward couldn't sleep thinking about how they would pay the bills, that all of this was my fault for being selfish in my old age. I read every word without being upset. It was like reading the script of a play I already knew. The same manipulations, the same attempts to make me feel guilty, but they no longer worked. Rodney also wrote, more direct than the others. Lydia, this is a mistake. Families always support each other. I don't understand how you can turn your back on your children like this. My mother would never do this to us. His mother, the one who never helped them with anything, the one who lived her life without carrying the responsibilities of adult children. I replied for the first time in days, "Rodney, your mother is right. Adult children should stand on their own 2 feet. Maybe it's time for you and Paula to learn that." He didn't reply, but he blocked me. And honestly, it was a relief. A week later, I received an unexpected call. It was from Arthur Sterling, my neighbor of 20 years, a widower like me, always kind, always respectful. "Lydia," he said, "forgive me for getting involved where I don't belong, but I've noticed you've been alone lately. Everything okay?" His call surprised me. For years, we had only waved hello from afar. "It's a long story, Arthur," I replied. "I have time," he said, and something in his voice made me trust him. I told him, not everything, but enough. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he sighed. "Lydia, you did the right thing. And I'm telling you this because I made the opposite mistake. I let my son drain me until there was nothing left. He died 3 years ago and left me with debts and regrets. Don't make my mistake." His words stayed with me. Debts and regrets, the 2 things I was avoiding. Arthur invited me for coffee. I accepted. We met at a small cafe near the park. We talked for 2 hours about life, about children, about how love sometimes blinds us until it's too late. He told me he had also given everything, that he had also been used, that he had also learned late that giving without limits is not love. It's self-destruction. "And you don't regret it?" I asked. "Regret setting limits? No," he replied. "I regret not setting them sooner." I left that cafe feeling less alone, less crazy, less monstrous, because Arthur had seen me not as an ATM, not as a resource, but as a person who had made a difficult and necessary decision. We walked back to my house together. He said goodbye with a hug, the first sincere hug I had received in months, a hug that didn't ask for anything, that only gave. And I realized something. I had been so busy giving that I had forgotten what it felt like to receive. 2 weeks after my decision, the family meeting arrived. Edward organized it. He sent me a formal message, almost like a legal summons. "Mom, we all need to talk together. Saturday, at 4 at your house. It's important." I didn't ask questions. I just replied, "Okay." I spent the preceding days preparing. Not emotionally, that was already settled. I prepared with evidence. I took out the gray folder, reviewed every document, every receipt, every transfer. If they wanted a family meeting, they would have it, but on my terms. Saturday arrived. At 4 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. I opened it. They were all there. Edward and Brenda, Paula and Rodney, even Jenna, Brenda's sister, who had never been to my house. A full audience. They came in silently, seating themselves in the living room. Everyone looked at me as if I were the accused and they were the jury. Edward spoke first. "Mom, this situation has become unsustainable. Brenda and I have talked to Paula and Rodney, and we think you need to understand the damage you are causing." Damage. That word, as if I were the destroyer, as if 15 years of sacrifice didn't count. "Go on," I said. My voice was calm, my hands resting in my lap, not shaking, not afraid. Brenda took the floor. "Lydia, we understand you're upset, but a family doesn't work like this. You can't just cut everything off because you had a bad day. The children are asking for you. They want their grandmother, but you are turning your back on them." The children again, the perfect shield. "May I speak now?" I asked. They all nodded, as if they were granting me permission in my own home. I stood up, went to my bedroom, grabbed the gray folder, returned to the living room, and placed it on the coffee table with a soft but firm thud. "What is that?" Paula asked. "It's this," I replied, opening the folder. "This is every single transfer I've made in 15 years. Every payment, every help, every emergency, all documented, all verified, all right here." I took out the papers, laying them in order on the table like poker cards, like evidence in a trial. "Edward," I said, looking him directly in the eye, "here is the receipt for the $40,000 I gave you for your house down payment. Here are the monthly payments of $1,200 for 5 years, $72,000. I pulled out more papers. "Paula, here is the payment for your kitchen remodel, $3,000. Rodney's coding course, $2,500. The kids' tutoring, $6,000 accumulated." I kept taking out papers. Each one was a stab of truth. Extra expenses, birthdays, Christmases, medical emergencies that weren't so urgent, $7,000 more. I looked at all of them, one by one. In total, in 15 years, I have given you $243,000, and that's not counting the meals I paid for, the gifts, the times I watched the children for free while you went on vacation, the hours of my life I gave without expecting anything in return. The silence was dense, heavy. No one looked at me. They only looked at the papers, the evidence of their dependency. "And when I asked for a little independence on your part," I continued, "you called me selfish, negative, toxic. You kicked me out of a family chat and asked me to take a step back." I closed the folder. "Well, here I am, stepping back as you asked, but with my money with me, because it turns out the space you wanted included my absence, but it did not include the absence of my wallet. And that is over." Edward tried to speak. "Mom, we never—" I interrupted him, something I had never done. "Yes, Edward, yes you did, and now you are going to learn to live without using me." Brenda stood up, her face red, her eyes full of tears that did not move me. "This is ridiculous. You are our mother. You are supposed to help us. That's what mothers are for." I laughed, a real liberating laugh. "No, Brenda. Mothers are for raising their children, for teaching them, for loving them, not for supporting them their entire lives. That's called parasitism, and I will no longer be the host." Paula was crying silently. Rodney stared at the floor. Jenna, Brenda's sister, looked at me with something close to respect, as if she finally understood. Edward walked toward the door. "This is useless. We didn't come here to be lectured. We came to resolve this." He turned back to me. "Mom, I'm giving you 1 week to reconsider. After that, you'll have to live with the consequences of pushing your family away." He opened the door. Brenda followed him. Before leaving, she looked at me with contempt. "The children are going to grow up without a grandmother. I hope your pride is worth it." And they left. Paula and Rodney stayed a few seconds longer. My daughter looked at me with pleading eyes. "Mom, please think about it." They left too. Only Jenna remained. We looked at each other in silence. She smiled sadly, but genuinely. "I'm sorry," she said. "For what?" I asked. "Because I should have said something sooner, years ago when I saw how this was all starting. But I thought it wasn't my place, that it was your business." She approached me and took my hand. "You did the right thing, Lydia, and I know it hurts, but it was necessary." I squeezed her hand. "Thank you," I whispered, because that thank you, that recognition, was worth more than all the dollars I had given. Jenna left too, and I stayed alone in my house, surrounded by papers that proved my point, and a silence that no longer scared me. That night, I didn't sleep well. Not from regret, but from adrenaline, from the release of having said everything, of having shown everything, of having defended myself. Finally, I got up at 3 a.m, made tea, sat in the kitchen, and cried. Not from sadness, but from liberation. I cried for all the years I didn't defend myself, for all the times I swallowed my words, for all the occasions I said yes when I wanted to scream no. I cried until there were no more tears, and when the sun rose, I felt lighter. The following days were absolute silence. No one called, no one texted. It was as if I had been erased, and curiously, it didn't bother me. It gave me space to think, to plan, to imagine a life that didn't revolve around solving other people's crises. I started doing things I had postponed for years. I enrolled in a painting class, something I always wanted to do but never had time for. I went to the doctor for a full checkup, something I avoided because I was always busy with other people's problems. I called friends I had neglected and discovered they were still there, waiting for me. Arthur and I began having coffee regularly, twice a week. Sometimes we talked about deep things, other times we just laughed at nonsense. He told me about his wife, I told him about my husband. We shared the pain of widowhood and the strange freedom that comes after. It wasn't romance, it was companionship. It was understanding that life doesn't end when your children abandon you, that there are other chapters, other beginnings. One afternoon, while painting in my class, I realized something. I was smiling, truly smiling, not forced, not fake. It was a smile that came from within, from a place that had been dormant for a long time. I was painting a sunset, orange and violet colors blending in the sky, and I realized that's how I felt, like a sunset, not an ending, but a beautiful transition between two stages. The darkness would come, but before it, this golden light, this peace, this moment. The week Edward had given me passed. There was no call, there was no text, only silence. And I understood that this silence was their answer, their way of punishing me, of making me feel guilty. But it no longer worked. The silence that once terrified me now gave me peace, because it was silence without demands, without invented emergencies, without requests disguised as love. It was simply silence. Antoinette came to visit me. She brought wine, cheese, and bread. We sat on my small balcony, watching the city light up with the evening lights. "How do you feel?" she asked. I thought about my answer. I really thought about it. "I feel free," I finally said. "For the first time in 15 years, I feel like my life belongs to me." She nodded. "And do you miss them?" I took a sip of wine. I miss the idea of who I thought they were. I miss the idea of them. But I don't miss the weight. I don't miss the pain. I don't miss feeling used. Antoinette raised her glass. "To freedom, even if it hurts." We clinked glasses, and in that crystal sound, there was something definitive, like a door closing, like a chapter ending. We talked until it got dark, about life, about decisions, about how sometimes love means letting go. She told me she had also had to set limits with her own children, that they had also called her selfish, that she had also doubted herself. "And now?" I asked. "Now I have a real relationship with them," she replied, "based on respect, not convenience. It took years, but it was worth it." Her words gave me hope. Maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe it was just the fire that burns away the fake so something real can grow. Or maybe it was the end. And that was okay too, because I would continue to exist. I would continue to live. I would continue to be Lydia. Not Mom, the ATM, not Mom, the lifesaver, just Lydia. A 72-year-old woman who had finally learned that self-love is not selfishness, it's survival. 3 weeks after my decision, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated before answering, but something told me to do it. "Lydia?" a young, nervous woman's voice asked. "Yes. Who is this?" There was a pause. "I'm Julia. Well, my name is Juliana, but everyone calls me Julia. I'm Edward's oldest daughter, your granddaughter." My heart stopped. Julia was 16 years old. The last time I saw her was 2 months ago for her birthday, where I gave her an envelope with $500 that she barely acknowledged. "Julia, are you okay?" I asked. "Yes, Grandma, I needed to talk to you without my parents knowing." I sat down. My legs were shaking. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" She took a deep breath. "Grandma, I know what happened. I heard my parents talking, well, yelling, about the money, about you. And I need you to know something. I don't agree with them." Her words hit me with unexpected force. "What exactly did you hear?" I asked. "Everything. that you stopped giving them money, that Dad is desperate because he can't pay the mortgage without your help, that Mom says you're selfish, that they're thinking about selling the house. And Grandma, I think you're right. I couldn't speak. Tears came without permission. My granddaughter, a 16-year-old teenager, understood what her own parents couldn't see. Why do you say that? I managed to ask. Because I've seen how they treat you for years. Every time you come over, they only talk about money, about problems, about things they need. They never ask how you are. They never truly thank you. And I noticed, but I didn't know what to do. I thought that's how families were. But now I understand that it's not. That it's wrong. I closed my eyes, listening to her voice, so mature, so clear. Julia, I don't want you to get into trouble with your parents over this. She laughed, a bitter laugh. Grandma, I'm already in trouble because I told them they were wrong, that you're not the bad guy, and Mom grounded me. She took my phone. I'm calling you from a friend's phone. My heart broke a little more. Sweetheart, you didn't have to do that. Yes, I did, she replied firmly, because someone has to tell you the truth. That you're not crazy, that you're not mean, that what you did was brave. We talked for an hour. Julia told me things I never knew. How Edward and Brenda constantly fought over money, how they always expected me to solve everything, how even the younger kids had learned that Grandma was the one who paid for things. She told me that her 10-year-old brother had said, "If Grandma doesn't give us money, why do we want her around?" And that no one corrected him. No one explained that people are not loved for what they give. They are loved for who they are. That conversation changed something in me because it confirmed that I wasn't imagining things, that the dynamic was real, and that even a teenager could see it clearly. After hanging up, I sat in the darkness thinking. Julia had given me a gift, the gift of validation, of knowing that I wasn't alone in my perception, that someone else saw the truth. And that truth, though painful, strengthened me because it meant my decision wasn't madness. It was sanity in a sick system. That night, I wrote a letter, not to send, just for me, to organize my thoughts, to process everything I was living through. I wrote about love, about limits, about how sometimes the greatest show of love is saying no. I tucked it into an envelope with no recipient, just as a testament to this moment, this transformation. A month after my decision, Paula showed up, alone, without Rodney, without the kids. She rang the doorbell mid-morning. I was having breakfast. I opened the door and saw her. She had dark circles under her eyes. She had lost weight. She looked tired. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice small. I nodded. I made coffee. We sat in silence. She stared at her mug, turning it in her hands without drinking. "Mom, I came to talk for real. Without Rodney, without Edward. Just me." I looked at her, waiting. "You're right," she finally said. Her eyes filled with tears. "About everything. We've been selfish, ungrateful. And the worst part is we didn't even realize it." I let her continue. She needed to say it, to get it all out. "Rodney and I did the math. We really did. We looked at how much you've given us, how many times you've been there, and we looked at how many times we've been there for you, and the answer is almost never. We didn't call you on your birthday last year. We didn't go to the hospital when you had your gallbladder surgery. We weren't there on the 5-year anniversary of Dad's death. We only showed up when we needed something." She was openly crying now. "And the worst part is, we convinced the kids that this was normal, that Grandma existed to give, not to receive." I moved closer and took her hand. "Paula, I appreciate that you see it. I truly do. But you understand that I can't go back to the way things were, right?" She nodded. "I know, and I'm not here to ask you to go back. I'm here to apologize and to tell you that we're going to be okay. Rodney got a better job. We're moving to a smaller apartment. We're going to adjust everything without your money, because that's how it should be." Her words were like balm. They didn't cure everything, but they healed something. "And Edward?" I asked. She shook her head. "Edward is furious. Brenda is too. They don't want to admit anything. They're looking for loans, talking to banks, blaming you for everything." I sighed. "I can't control how they react, Paula. I can only control my decisions." She squeezed my hand. "I know, and your decision was the right one. Even if it hurts me to admit it, even if it took me a month to see it, it was right." We hugged, and that hug was different. It had no hidden agenda. It came with no requests. It was just a hug from daughter to mother, from person to person, real, true healing. When she left, I was left with a strange feeling. It wasn't complete joy, but it wasn't pain either. It was something in between, cautious hope. The possibility that maybe, with time, something real could be rebuilt. 2 days later, Arthur invited me out to dinner at a small restaurant overlooking the waterfront. I hadn't been to a place like that in years. I was always saving, always holding back so I could give to others. I put on an emerald green dress I had bought and never worn. I did my hair, put on makeup. I looked in the mirror and saw a woman I didn't recognize, but who I liked. A woman who dressed up for herself, not to impress anyone, just because she wanted to feel good. The dinner was wonderful. We talked about everything and nothing. Arthur told me about his grandson, who was studying abroad, about his plans to travel next year, about how he had learned to cook after his wife died. I told him about my painting class, my new friends, how I was rediscovering who Lydia was without the burden of being a provider. We laughed a lot, and I realized it had been months since I had laughed like that, free, without guilt, without fear of the phone ringing with a new emergency. When we finished dinner, we walked along the boardwalk. The air smelled of salt. The city lights glittered, reflecting on the water. "Lydia," Arthur said, stopping, "I want to tell you something. These last few months, getting to know you better, I've seen something beautiful. I've seen a woman reclaim her life, her power, her voice, and it has been a privilege to witness it." I blushed. "Thank you, Arthur. You've been an important part of that. You've listened to me without judgment. You've accompanied me without asking for anything, and that has meant more than you can imagine." We stood watching the ocean in silence, a comfortable, complete silence, and I understood something fundamental. I had spent so many years filling silences with sacrifices that I had forgotten that silences can also be peace, that not all empty spaces need to be filled, that sometimes simply being, existing, without giving, without doing, without solving, is enough. It is more than enough. It is everything. 6 weeks after my decision, I received an email from the bank. The subject line read, "Important mortgage notification." My heart beat faster. I opened the email. It informed me that Edward had formally requested my withdrawal as guarantor, that the process was underway, and that in 30 days my name would no longer be linked to that debt. I read the email 3 times, and then something strange happened. I smiled. Not from malicious joy, but from deep relief, because it meant he was taking responsibility, that he was looking for solutions, that finally, after all this time, he was being an adult. That same afternoon, I called my accountant. "I need to review my full financial situation," I told him. We made an appointment for the following week. When I arrived at his office, I brought all my bank statements. He reviewed everything carefully. After an hour, he looked at me over his glasses. "Lydia, do you know how much money you've saved in these 2 months?" I shook my head. $10,000. $10,000 that used to automatically leave your account and is now staying with you. He showed me the numbers, the projections. "If you continue like this, in 5 years, you will have recovered a significant portion of what you gave and will have a dignified retirement." I left that office with something I hadn't felt in years: financial security. I wasn't rich, but I also wasn't draining myself to support other people's lives. I was stable, self-sufficient, free. That night, I calculated how many years each decision had cost me. The $40,000 for the down payment, 2 years of work. The $72,000 for the mortgage, 4 years. The monthly transfers, 6 years. In total, I had given almost 12 years of my working life. 12 years I would never get back, but that at least would now stop multiplying. One morning, while having coffee on the balcony, my phone rang. It was Julia again. "Grandma, can I come visit today after school?" "Of course you can," I told her. She arrived at 4 o'clock in the afternoon with her backpack, her eyes bright. She came in and hugged me tight. "I missed you," she whispered. And I felt something inside me melt because that hug didn't ask for anything. It only gave. I made hot cocoa. We sat in the living room. She told me about school, about her friends, about a boy she liked. Normal things, teenage things, things that had nothing to do with money or problems. "Grandma," she said after a while, "I want you to know something. Dad and Mom are still mad at you, but I'm not. I understand why you did it, and I think it was brave." I stroked her hair. "Julia, someday you too will have to set limits in your life with the people you love, and it will hurt, but it will be necessary. And I want you to remember this moment, to remember that it's okay to say no, that it's okay to protect yourself, that it's okay to exist for yourself." She nodded, her eyes moist. "I will remember, I promise." Before leaving, she pulled something out of her backpack, an envelope. "Here," she said, placing it in my hands. "What is this?" She smiled timidly. "It's the $500 you gave me for my birthday. I saved it, I didn't spend it. Because when you gave it to me, I didn't even thank you properly. I was so used to receiving from you that I thought it was normal. But now I understand that nothing you gave us was normal. It was sacrifice, it was love, and I didn't value it. So I'm giving it back to you, not because I don't need it, but because I need you to know that I understand, that I see it, that I value it. Please keep it, or use it on yourself, on something that makes you happy, because you deserve it." My tears fell uncontrollably. I tried to give it back to her. "No, sweetheart, that money is yours. It was a gift." She shook her head. "Grandma, the best gift you've given me isn't money. It's this lesson. It's showing up strong. It's teaching me that true love has boundaries, and that is priceless." I hugged her, crying. My little Julia had understood at 16 what her parents didn't understand at 40. She had learned the lesson that took me 72 years to learn. That night, I couldn't sleep, but not from anguish. It was from something akin to fulfillment, because Julia had given me hope, the hope that this pain, this cutting off, this rupture hadn't been in vain. It had planted a seed in the next generation, a seed of dignity, of boundaries, of self-love, and that seed would grow. Maybe not in Edward, maybe not in Brenda, but in Julia. And that was enough. It was more than enough. 2.5 months after my decision, Antoinette organized a dinner at her house. She invited her friends and invited me. I arrived with wine and flowers. The house was filled with laughter. Women my age, some older, some a little younger, all with stories, all with scars, all with hard-won wisdom. During dinner, someone asked, "And you, Lydia, how are you doing?" And for the first time in my life, I answered with total honesty. I told them everything, no filters, no shame, no fear of judgment. When I finished, the silence was brief. Then, one by one, they began to speak. Teresa told how her son had defrauded her, taking her savings, promising a business that never materialized. Rose spoke of her daughter who only called her to ask her to watch the grandchildren, who treated her like a free babysitter, who got mad if she had plans of her own. Carmen shared how her children had sold her house without consulting her, telling her it was for her own good and keeping the money. Each story was a mirror. Each testimony was validation. I was not alone. I was not the only one. I was not a monster for setting boundaries. That night, I understood something fundamental. The women of my generation, the mothers, the grandmothers, we have been trained to give until we disappear, to sacrifice ourselves until we are erased, to exist only for the sake of others. And when we finally claim a space of our own, when we finally say enough, the world calls us selfish, punishes us, abandons us. But the truth is otherwise. The truth is that we have been exploited under the guise of love. And waking up from that exploitation, even if it hurts, even if it costs you, is the most revolutionary act we can perform. At the end of the night, Antoinette raised her glass. To the women who learned to say no, to the mothers who reclaimed their lives, to the grandmothers who stopped being ATMs and became people again, to us, to Lydia, to all of us. We clinked glasses, and in that sound, there was something sacred, something powerful. The sisterhood of women who refused to continue being martyrs, who chose to live instead of just serve, who understood that you cannot give from an empty well. I left that house feeling something new, community, belonging, not with my blood family, but with my chosen family, with these women who understood me without explanation, who supported me without conditions, who celebrated my courage instead of punishing it. And I realized I had gained more than I had lost. I had lost children who used me, but I had gained friends who saw me. I had lost the illusion of a perfect family, but I had gained the reality of an authentic life. And that reality, although imperfect, was mine, completely mine. That night, before bed, I took out my diary, a new one I had bought the week before, brown, with blank pages waiting to be filled. I wrote on the first page, "Today, my real life begins. Not the life others designed for me, not the life of serving and disappearing, but my life, the life of Lydia, a 72-year-old woman who finally learned that existing is enough, that I don't have to earn my place in the world by giving pieces of myself, that I can simply be and stay and live without asking for forgiveness, without giving explanations, without carrying other people's worlds on my back. This is not the end. It is the beginning. And for the first time in decades, I am excited about what comes next." 3 months after my decision, I woke up with the sun streaming through the window. It was Saturday. Saturdays used to mean calls, requests, invented emergencies. Now they meant silence, peace, time for me. I got up slowly, with no rush. I made coffee and toast, sat on the balcony, and breathed deeply, fully, freely. The air tasted different, or perhaps it was me who had changed, who had learned to savor life instead of just surviving it. My phone vibrated. A text from Paula. "Mom, the kids are asking for you. Can we visit tomorrow with no agenda? Just to see you." I read the message 3 times, looking for the trap, the hidden hook, but I didn't find it. I replied, "Tomorrow is fine, at 3. She replied with a simple heart emoji, without words. And that, in a way, said more than 1,000 apologies, because she had learned that sometimes true love is silent. It doesn't scream, it doesn't demand. It just shows up with consistency, with respect, with real presence. The next day, Paula arrived with her children. Rodney didn't come, and that was okay. Not everyone has to be ready at the same time. The children hugged me. We talked. I made them cookies, just like before, but different, because now I decided when and how, without obligation, without guilt. Paula helped me wash the dishes. "Mom," she said, wiping a cup dry, "I know the road is long, that I can't erase 15 years with a few visits, but I want you to know that I'm trying, that I'm learning, that I want a real relationship with you, not based on convenience, but on genuine love." I took her soap-damp hand. "Paula, the fact that you see it is enough. The fact that you're here without asking for anything means more than you can imagine." She smiled with tears in her eyes, and that moment, that instant of real connection, was worth more than all the dollars I had ever given, because it was genuine, it was clean, it was the beginning of something new, something healthy, something that perhaps, with time, could be called family again. That week, I also received an unexpected call from Edward. I didn't answer immediately. I let it ring, breathed, decided, and finally picked up the phone. "Hi, Mom," his voice said, tired, different. "Hello, Edward." There was a long, uncomfortable silence. "Mom, I need to tell you something, and it's not easy." I waited, without pressuring him, without helping him. You were right about everything. Brenda and I have been going to therapy, and the counselor made us see things we didn't want to see, about how we treated you, about our dependency, about everything. His voice broke. I'm not asking for your forgiveness because I know words aren't enough, but I want you to know that I'm working on myself, that we sold the house, that we're moving to something smaller, that we're living on what we earn. And it's hard, very hard, but it's right. And I know it is because for the first time in years, I can sleep without that pressure in my chest, without that voice telling me I was a failure, that I couldn't support my family without my mom. My tears fell silently. Edward, I'm glad you're doing that work. Truly. He breathed deeply. Do you think you can ever forgive me? I thought about my answer. I really thought about it. Edward, I don't know if forgiveness is the right word, because that would imply there was a crime, and maybe it wasn't a crime. It was ignorance. It was convenience. It was following a pattern without questioning it. What I can tell you is that I don't hold resentment, that I wish you well, that I admire you for seeking help, and that maybe with time we can build something new, different, healthier. Thank you, Mom, he whispered. That's more than I deserve. We hung up, and I stood there with the phone in my hand, feeling something strange. It wasn't complete joy, but it wasn't pain either. It was realistic hope. The acceptance that broken relationships can heal, but they never go back to being what they were. They become something else, and that's okay. 4 months after my decision, Arthur invited me to travel. Nothing crazy, he said, laughing. Just a week at the beach, 2 old folks enjoying the sun and the sea. I accepted without hesitation. I hadn't been to the beach in 20 years. There was always a reason not to go. There was always someone who needed me. There was always something more important than me. But not now. Now, I was the priority. We packed our bags, took the bus, and during that week, I discovered something marvelous. I could still be happy. I could laugh until my stomach hurt. I could walk on the sand, feeling the water on my feet. I could watch the sunset without thinking about other people's problems. I could simply exist, live, be. One night, sitting on the hotel terrace with Arthur, I looked at the stars. What are you thinking about? He asked. I'm thinking that I spent 72 years believing that my value lay in what I could give, in what I could do for others. And it turns out my value was always in simply being me, in existing, in breathing, in taking up space without apologizing. Arthur nodded. We should all learn that sooner, but perhaps reaching this age with that lesson is the gift, the prize for surviving. We toasted with cheap hotel wine, and that toast was sacred. It was a celebration of life, of second chances, of late beginnings that arrived just in time. When I returned from the trip, my house welcomed me differently. It was no longer a refuge of exhaustion. It was a home of peace. I put the trip photos on the refrigerator, opened the windows, put on music, and danced alone in my living room. No witnesses, no judgment. Just me and my 72-year-old body moving with freedom, with joy, with life. Because I had finally understood that life is not about getting to the end, having given everything. It's about getting there having lived everything. And I, after so many years asleep, had finally woken up. Julia continued to visit me every week. Sometimes she brought her homework. Other times, she just wanted to talk. She became my connection to the future, my hope that things can change, that the next generation can learn from our mistakes. One day she told me, Grandma, when I grow up, I want to be like you, strong, brave, someone who respects herself. I hugged her, crying. Sweetheart, you already are all of that. Just remember never to forget it. Never let anyone convince you that existing for yourself is selfishness. It's survival. It's self-love. It's life. 6 months after that message, that green thumb emoji, that exclusion that turned into liberation, I sat down to write, not for them, but for me, to document this journey, this transformation, this death and rebirth. I wrote, "They called me selfish for wanting to live. They called me cruel for setting limits. They punished me with silence for daring to exist. But what they didn't understand is that their punishment was my gift. Their absence was my peace. Their rejection was my freedom." I wrote about the green thumb, about how an emoji can hold so much venom, but also be the catalyst for your awakening. I wrote about the $243,000, about how I bought my own slavery under the excuse of love. I wrote about Julia, about Paula, about Edward, about second chances that not everyone takes, but some do. I wrote about Arthur, about Antoinette, about the women who held me when my family let go, about how family by blood is assigned, but family by choice is earned. And I wrote about myself, about Lydia, a woman who took 72 years to learn that she didn't have to earn the right to exist, that her life belonged to her, that she could say no without explanations, that she could live without carrying other people's worlds, that she could simply be. And that simple act of being was revolutionary, it was powerful, it was sufficient. I closed the notebook, put it away, and went out onto the balcony. The sun was setting, painting the sky with oranges and violets, just like my painting in class, just like my life now, a beautiful sunset between two stages. I was no longer afraid of the night that would come, because I had learned that after every night comes a dawn. And I, after years of darkness, had finally awakened. I breathed deeply, the air entering my lungs clean, and I smiled. Not because everything was perfect, but because I was finally okay with the imperfect, because I had learned the most important lesson. You cannot give from an empty well. And I, after so many years dry, was finally filling up, drop by drop, decision by decision, boundary by boundary. I was filling up, and this time, the water was just for me. Did you like my story, and which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you liked the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.